IGCSE Computer Science, Syllabus Statement 2.1.2c. Understand and use the pseudocode if statement. So, it's also known as the if, then, else, and if statement. But, yeah, the if statement is one of the conditional statements that you need to know. So, yeah, we'll take a look at that. In the last video, we looked at comparison and logical operators, so we'll be using those here as well. So here's some pseudocode for the if, then, else, and if statement. So here we have the comparison operator, the greater than. So here, this is true, as you can see, because num1, which is 10, is higher than num2, which is 5, so 10 is higher than 5. So when this is true, it executes this line right here. The output num1 is greater than num2 string or line. So what about this part? What about the else output num1 is less than or equal to num2? Well, this executes if this is false. So say num1 was 5 and num2 was 10. This is false. This doesn't execute. So the else statement will execute and print this. Let's take a look at that in Python. So back to the Python IDE that we were using in the last video, we'll look at the if statement. So we had that pseudocode that we had just a second ago. I think we had something like num1 equals 10 and num2 equals 5. So if num1 is greater than num2, then we don't need a then, but in Python we need this. But in pseudocode, make sure you say then, because I think they expect you to say then, do this, else do this. So we want to print num1 is greater than num2. Then we want else print num1 is less than or equal to num2. And that's it. So in Python, Python makes use of the colon and indentation to group statements in an if or else block. So if we had this here, it would say, okay, that's fine. But if we didn't have that tab, it would say, no, hang on, something weird is going on here. So indentation is important in Python, but it's also important when you're writing your programs in pseudocode on the paper, because it just makes it easier to actually read and group code. In pseudocode, I think you can have multiple lines for an if and else statement, and like you don't really need to indent, because it's kind of like, you know, they can tell when the lines are finished or when the block ends because there's an else statement. So they'll say, okay, that must be the end of the if block, and then it'll execute this, and then you can have multiple lines in the else statement, and then they'll say, and then you have the end if. In Python there's no end if because again, indentation, but in pseudocode there is an end if that basically ends both if and else blocks. That's pretty much how it works. So you'll start to get used to it when you start writing actual code in pseudocode on the paper. But this is what it would print. We can get rid of the... So this is what it would print. If we switch them, it would print num1 is less than or equal to num2. Now, if we had 5, it would print this, because 5 is less than or equal to 5. So that's pretty much how the if-else statement works. I don't know if you have to know this for pseudocode, but we'll just get to know this. There's also the elif statement, where you could say print or elif. We need something here. Let's just say num1 is less than 10 and num2 is greater than 5. let's change that to num1. We can make this 6. Then we can print, again, they're underlining it because we could simplify it, but we're not going to. We can print, let's print this actually. So if we run that, it says num1 is greater than num2. Now hang on, why didn't this print? Because this is true. Well, this is where the elif statement comes in. Elif, basically, you can think of it like a ladder. So what happens is, think of it as climbing down a ladder. Each step is an if or elif statement. So what happens is it checks the first if statement, the first step. If the step is true, then the person jumps off the ladder. So basically these will all be skipped, including this. If this was false, so like if this, we just change this to this, then this would run, this would print. Because it says, okay, hang on, this is false, let's go to the next step. Oh, this is true, execute this, jump off the ladder. It's kind of like that. I mean, I guess you could use this in pseudocode, but I don't know. I don't know if they allow it. They should do, because I think most examiners would be familiar with Python. But even if they weren't, Python kind of makes sense just by itself. So, yeah, that's pretty much it.